Today is Monday, September 6th, 2021. We shall be speaking with Phil Ladenla, who is at the moment in Palo Alto, California. The time there is about 4 p.m. and it is the same time here in Los Angeles. Phil attended North Point from 1939 to 1948, and before that, from 1937 to 38, he was in kindergarten in Loretto. So Phil, thank you very much for being with us today and spending the time with us to talk to us today. And I hope that you are doing well.
Thank you. Of course, the ages start to catch up with you, but you try to stay just a couple of steps ahead.
It's wonderful to see you, Phil. And I have 3 short questions to ask of you. And the first one is, you're from a very renowned Darjeeling family, with the town's most prominent road being named after your family. Can you give us a brief history of your family's connection with Darjeeling?
I will be happy to do that, except I must warn you it won't be that brief, if you don't mind.
I don't. Please go ahead. We are very interested to hear your comments.
Okay, very good. The road in Darjeeling with my family's name is named after my grandfather, Sonam Wongfel Ladenla, born 1876, died 1936. We will refer to him in our conversation here as SWL, and we will start with the origins of his forebears. In the kingdom of Minyak in northeast Tibet, about the 10th to 13th century AD, one of the junior princes realized he had no hopes of succession to the throne and decided to go south towards central Tibet with his retinue. After his death, his sons decided to cross the Himalayas and south into the region of Sikkim and settle there with their Tibetan Buddhist culture. Around the 17th century, the indigenous people in Sikkim, the Lepchas, invited them to set up a government, which they did. SWL's forebears were lamas, tax collectors, and workers for the government. In the early 1800s, the British realized that Darjeeling had a comfortable climate and that it would be perfect as a resort for their administrators, soldiers, and businessmen. And that is when they wrested control of the area from Sikkim in a settlement involving a Nepalese invasion and withdrawal. SWL's grandfather, Chivang Rinzing Ladenla, who had been a headman and tax collector for the region, was now appointed an assistant to Dr. Archibald Campbell, the superintendent of Darjeeling. Campbell astutely discovered that Darjeeling was ideally suited for the growth of 2 tea bushes smuggled out of China and development of the subsequent world-famous tea industry. The railroad had reached Darjeeling in 1881, and the town was growing rapidly because all the commercial activities by the British and European settlers, all of them a major Christian group. Then there were the Tibetan Sikkimese Bhutias, the Bhutanese Bhutias, the Tibetan traders from the major cities in Tibet, the Lepchas, the Nepalese from Jimbu, Ragai, Magar, Tamang, and Newar tribes, traders from Rajasthan, Hindu, Bengali, and Biharis, Hindu, Bengalis, and Biharis from the plains, Muslims from Bengal, Kashmir, and Afghanistan, Parsis from Bombay, and Sikh from Punjab. Meanwhile, the Chodja, the king of Sikkim, realized that the Sikkimese there should retain their identity. And thus, it would be better to cooperate with the British, who were a great world power. He initiated that the Sikkimese residents needed to be educated for their own benefit and arranged for boys to be educated in Tibetan language and religion, and also English and mathematics. As a young boy, SWL was now educated in the Gum monastery by a very erudite monk, Lama Sherab Gyatso, and in the latter by Jesuits at Sunnybank, the precursor to North Point. In 1884, at 18 years of age, SWL was appointed a typesetter at the government printing office and was involved in the production of the first Tibetan English dictionary by Sarat Chandra Das. After this, he joined the Deputy Commissioner's office as an interpreter and then appointed to the Imperial Police Service. In 1899, he was promoted to office rank, the first for a local boy. He spent 2 years honing his skills, languages, the many dialects of different peoples resident there, integrity, exercising his duties, and understanding the local sensitivities of all these different communities. In 1901, he was promoted to assistant to the Deputy Commissioner of Darjeeling District and became involved in frontier intelligence work. Britain was now involved in the great game on Tibet, the relative influence of Russia, China, and Britain, that is India, on Tibet. The British made several efforts to open up communication with the Tibetan government, but they were ignored. They finally decided on sending an armed force to Tibet via Sikkim. SWL was involved in the logistics of this expedition. The expeditionary force experienced a pitched battle with the Tibetan force inside Tibet. The Tibetans were not prepared for modern arms and were massacred. Both sides withdrew and things were at a standstill. But the British were satisfied that they were not losing the great game, and the Tibetan government permitted a British trade agent to set up office in Gyansi, the second largest city in Tibet. In 1905, the British trade agent in Gyansi issued an invitation to the Panchen Lama, Tibet's second highest pontiff, to visit Buddhist holy places in India. SWL was deputed by the government to be the interpreter and liaison officer. He escorted the Panchen Lama to Bodh Gaya, then to Calcutta, for a meeting with Lord Minto, the Viceroy of India. Later, the Prince of Wales, later King George V, arrived, and they had several meetings. The Tibetan guests were highly impressed and found that the British were people they could work with. In 1909, the Dalai Lama returned to Tibet after 5 years in China and Mongolia, and was very concerned that China wanted to control Tibet, which he naturally could not agree to. Moreover, in 1910, the Chinese army started to march towards Tibet. His Holiness fled Lhasa with a retinue of 100 officials and retainers, just in time, and arrived in Sikkim and India. The British welcomed him to Darjeeling, and SWL was appointed the chief. He was an officer. He was escorted to several Buddhist pilgrimage places in India. In 1911, the Imperial Empire of China was crumbling, and the Republic of China was declared under Sun Yat-sen. A face-saving retreat of the Chinese army in Tibet and their envoy was arranged, and SWL was involved in escorting the envoy out of Tibet into India and back to China. While crossing the passes, SWL's muleteer was swept away by an avalanche, and SW himself was buried under snow. Fortunately, he used his walking stick to poke his way out of the snow and waved it energetically to get the attention of rescuers. In 1913, the British and the Dalai Lama agreed to have 4 Tibetan boys educated in England. SWL, representing British India, and a Tibetan official, Lungsha, for the Tibetan government, gained much attention in England. They and the party were presented to His Majesty George V, and an impressive array of gifts befitting a monarch was sent by His Holiness to the British throne. The 4 students were joined by SWL's eldest son to be educated there in England. In 1914, Britain, Tibet, and China conducted a similar conference to demarcate the border between Tibet and India. SWL officially performed the role of interpreter. Britain, through India and Tibet, signed the agreement, but the Chinese envoy only initialed it. This is why we continue to this day to have border problems between India and China, who now, of course, control Tibet. With World War II in existence, SWL returned to his police duty and to his new position as Superintendent of Police for Jalpaiguri District, the first non-English to fill this role. He was now 40 years old and viewed as leader of all the local people of Darjeeling. He established the Hillmen's Association, which included all 3 of the major ethnic groups, the Bhutias, the Lepchas, and the Nepalis. Of course, within each were subgroups divided by dialect and religion. They presented a memorandum to the provincial government of Bengal to request that they be separated to their own province, the Northeast Frontier Province, which distinguished them from the rest of India by race, religion, history, geography, and language. This was not fruitful. However, this was the precursor of effort that followed. In 1920, with World War I over and Russia in turmoil, the great game was over. The British were welcome to Tibet, and SWL was invited to join the British envoy, Sir Charles Bell. This also cemented his relationship with Sarong Chapé and other high-ranking officials in the Tibetan government. Taro was CNC of the army and keen on modernizing Tibet. He promoted establishing a police force, the first in the nation. The Tibetan soldiers and monks were not in favor, as saw this as intruding on their activity. SWL was requested to establish the police force, which he did with gusto, ordering uniforms, organizing a band, and forming a supervisory group consisting of promising young members of the government. Unfortunately, in 1924, some soldiers attacked some policemen and killed one of them. Sarong Chapé ordered punishment of the ringleader, which led to his death. This inflamed temper, and the Dalai Lama was disturbed. Sarong held a meeting of senior military and police officers at SWL's residence, and they decided to petition His Holiness the Dalai Lama not to be angry, and they did so. But a rival political officer, Lung Sha, spread the rumor that the meeting was to actually remove the political authority of the Dalai Lama, and this caused great uproar. In due time, both SWL and Sarong cleared their names, but they decided to let matters simmer down and decided to return to India for family reasons, while leaving the army and the police in capable hands. In 1925, SWL was now back at its full duties in Darjeeling as additional superintendent of police, including head of the district intelligence branch. He was requested by the Tibetan government to stop the stamping of counterfeit copper Tibetan coins in India, which were then making their way to Tibet and having an effect on the economy there. So SWL made a trip near the Sikkim border and came across a suspicious mule caravan. They were stopped at a nearby police station, and they discovered over 200,000 counterfeit copper coins on their way to Tibet. So, of course, these people were taken into prison, and it turned out that there was this Nepali Newari group in Calcutta stamping out these coins. And they were on the verge of also producing banknotes. So it was in the nick of time that they avoided an even bigger economic problem in Tibet. In February and March 1930, there was a big crisis in Tibet, and SWL was called to help, and the British in India decided definitely that he would be the man to help. It turned out that a Nepalese subject had been accused of spying for Nepal. The Tibetan government demanded his surrender. He took refuge in the Nepalese legation. Lung Shah, whom we have seen earlier, mentioned here, with a large police force encroached on the Nepalese legation. He ignored diplomatic immunity and arrested the Nepali citizen. Unfortunately, he died. The Nepal government was furious and started moving their troops to the border with Tibet. The British government in India was very concerned, and they again told SWL post haste to make way for Lhasa in Tibet and to get the Tibetan government to apologize. There were several versions of the apology, and finally, the final version, which the British in India also saw, passed on to the Nepali government, and they agreed to it. So this was a very, very, very important event for Tibet, and it was a war between Tibet and Nepal were avoided. In 1931, July, SWL retired from the police force at age 55. So he now had opportunity to concentrate on his local religious, social, political activity. In religion, he was president of several Buddhist monasteries, different aspects of Buddhism, others in different areas of the district. He increased the Boy Scouts membership from 400 to 800 and welcomed to Darjeeling Baden Powell and Lord Roberts, who developed great respect for him. Grandfather also led the Himalayan Children's Advancement Association to benefit orphans and underprivileged. However, the Hillsman's Association was rife with separatism, primarily a segment in the Nepali group. So the original goal of the association to form a separate province in India was voided by an act that the government passed in 1935. It only allowed a member of the Darjeeling district to sit in the Bengal Legislative Assembly. The election for the seat was to be held in 1937. Grandfather decided, anyway, since they had not been able to get their own province, to run for this seat in the Legislative Assembly. And he decided to mount his campaign. He canvassed for support, and on December 22, 1936, he made a journey to Kalimpong, where he drew huge crowds, and drew huge support. He was supposed to return to Darjeeling the next day. However, that night, he passed away. It was a tremendous shock to everybody, everyone. Of course, I have my own memory. I was a 5-year-old boy at that time. In his retirement, I remember that he had a set of Roman rings installed in the corridor of the house for exercise. After exercise, he would have an English breakfast: eggs, ham, sausage or bacon, toast and marmalade, and tea, served by my mother. He would eat in solitude, thinking busily of his task while in retirement. I remember occasionally sitting in his lap in the prayer room at night, sharing his Tibetan shawl for warmth, Most of his time was taken up with social and charitable activities. And I remember the stairway, 900 people waiting to request favors. No wonder people revert to him as the uncrowned king of Tibet. All of this came to an end with his sudden death at only 60 years of age. I still remember the drums and the plaintive reed instrument that played from the housetop for some time, and the funeral procession for his cremation at Gom Monastery, reported at over a mile long. And that is the life of my grandpa.
Wow. Phil, it's such a fascinating story, illuminating, very touching, and so personal that I have never heard about this, and I don't think many of us would even be able to fathom the actual history in the making from history books or any other written material, and coming from a grandson.
This book was written of him by my sister and her late husband. It came out in 2006. It is available if anybody is interested in pursuing. Here is the information.
I will put that up. I will put that up, including with the ISBN number for those who are interested. They could order it from either India or through Amazon.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for showing this to us and sharing your history, your personal history, for not only North Pointers but also the family and friends that will come to look at this video and get this information from you, personal and so close to your heart. Thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart, Phil, for sharing it. So can we go on to the next question about now the association that you have with North Point? At the same time, you have been so deeply involved, or had been very deeply involved, with the Alumni Association, especially with the US Alumni Association here, in not only in the West Coast, but I think you were quite instrumental with the East Coast folks as well. And I came to know you maybe about 25 or 30 years ago. So question is, what drives you, or what drove you down that path to be so involved with alumni activities?
Well, it's really very simple. You know, every year, you might remember, the North Point Annual was published, and it was a review of the past year, academic, sport, religious studies, etc. But we, as students at North Point, knew all of that. We were more interested, I think, in the alumni, reading about where they were, what they were doing, the different cultures and societies they were in. So we see ourselves as products of a school and a fraternity that is spread all over the world today because of ease of travel and the wide array of choices of life. And it's wonderful that we can make contact, share fond memories of North Point, exchange experiences, help one another if we can. North Point reunions organized by Philip Company for Europe and the UK. I have such fond memories of making contact with my classmates, all the way from India, all the way from North Point and contemporary. And also, you have done the same here, and not only on the West Coast, but for so many overseas destinations all over Asia. I would have thoroughly enjoyed these trips that you have organized, but I don't travel overseas anymore. I wish I could be 20 years younger than I would. So that is my reason.
Well, Phil, you're well respected amongst the alumni association, even though we don't communicate as often as we would like to, because not only did you were one of the stalwarts that started an association like this, but you still are deeply involved with activities and your friends all over the world. So appreciation is due, and thank you again very much for being so close and a part of North Point and the North Point spirit. So I have one last question of you, Phil. What are some of the qualities you picked up when you were in North Point and learnt during those days that you still treasure and apply to your daily life these days?
It's kind of hard to, just pinpoint various things. But I think it just grows on you and you develop them. So I would like to start with kindergarten in Loreto, where I was for 2 years, and many of my local friends, residents, also attended, like Durga Das and Dwarika Das, the elder brothers of Vishnu Das Pradhan, our fellow North Pointer. Then there were my cousins, Sonam and Tenki Tendulkar, with their English names, Joan and Tenki, and very unusual, Leela Seth. She was a brilliant student who grew up to become the first Lady Chief Justice of Himachal Pradesh High Court, and also mother of Vikram Seth, who is the author of A Suitable Boy. Now, she herself also wrote an autobiography, which is very, very beautiful, and I just don't remember the name right now, but I'm sure people can Google it and they will find it extremely, extremely interesting and beneficial. So I want to mention one thing that to me is so, I don't know, Saratu had biggest outset, nice feelings about Loreto, about the Irish nuns, and just my being there at Loreto. And that is when I was christened my English name. I will tell you how it happened. Our Irish nun, she was trying to get us to line up. And then she looked at me. She seemed befuddled. She went blank, her face. She said, looked out the window as if to heaven, put her finger to her head, and then pointed to me and said, from today you are Philip. So from that day on, I have been Philip. And remember rushing home up the step, telling my mother, I have an English name now. It's Philip. Philip. But of course, officially, Pulpa is still there. But in many places, when I put on my name officially as Pulpa, they still have me in the register as Philip, which is probably okay. As you mentioned earlier, I spent 10 years at North Point School, beginning with, of course, the primary at age 8. And us boys who lived in the town of Darjeeling, most of us were day scholars for quite a few years. In fact, I was a boarder only for the last 2 years in preparation for the Cambridge School Living Certificate, and of course, to feel more the spirit of North Point. So at that time, and always, the Jesuits, have a reputation for being great teachers. And also, they were anxious to convert at that time when we were very young, but later on, this took on very little importance. We were all brought up either in the catechism or moral science. And of course, these are guides to us in our lives. Now, in the last 2 years of North Point, we have the same teacher. And for us, I'm very happy that we had Father Bourget. And Father Bourget told us, now, you boys, in these 2 years, you have to study only one subject of this two. You can't get both. It's either biology or Latin. My own preference is that you study Latin because it forms the mind. And to me, I decided, yes, I will definitely study Latin. And I took a lot of interest in it. And I noticed, indeed, that it helped a lot in the formation of the English language. One evening, during a study class, one of my classmates, Keith, I won't give you his last name, I just say Keith S., comes to me and he says, Ladenla, can you help me with deconstructing this Latin? I said, sure. So it was a sentence in a Latin classic. And after I finished, he looks at me and utterly so, I don't know what's the right word, flabbergasted. And, he says to me, how the hell, how can a boot do this? Now, boot is a derogative for one brought up in the Sikkimese Tibetan tradition. I was slightly amused and confident in my own ability. Our highly regarded science and math teacher, Mr. Banerjee, joined NP in our final 2 years, and we benefited highly. I will never forget the day he demonstrated the production of hydrogen in class. Now, this was just in our regular class, not in a laboratory. He comes in there, he places a cuvette with water, and he drops a nugget of sodium. See the sodium floating around there. You see the fizz of all the gas and the hydrogen. And then he decides that he wants this to accelerate. So he pushes it down into the water. And of course, with a big bang, everything goes up. And all of us, we lift up our desk because to protect us. Because you may remember the lesson those days, they had a lid, the cover. So we lift up the cover to protect ourselves. But it was too late. Anyway, that was a great lesson. And you still see that little bit of sodium still bouncing around on the floor. But you said, okay, now you learned something. You prepared for it in a scientific experiment. What was the next? Yes, in our college department, it was women were allowed only, this was the second year that women were allowed in the college department. And I was in class the one day, and the class bell rings, and everybody gets up to go out. But there is Father Hayden, our science teacher. He said, wait. So everybody stops in mid-step. And he said, some people are already at the door. And he says, ladies first, except in danger. And we always, from that day on, we remember your manner. Yes. It was another event. It was 2 weeks before our school leaving certificate examination. And the school was empty except for us because it was approaching mid-December. And we decided that we should do something to add additional verb to our preparation. And the conversation had gone on for a while previously, but finally we said, let's do it. So we set out at midnight, made our way on Birchall Road, through Chaurasta, on Tenzing Norgay Road, which had a different name at that time. This is on the east side of the Darjeeling Massif. And not unlike the Ghat Road on the west side, which is paved over beautifully, there was no paving. There was just earth and rocks and so on at that time. Well, here we are at night, moonless, and trudging over this and stumbling over these rocks and so on. And in addition, we had one of us who wasn't doing so well because he had already hurt his foot some time ago, Shoylin Ghosh, who, by the way, lives very close to me here in Northern California, and we're very thankful to be in touch with one another all the time. So then we remembered from our chorus, here's a hand to the faltering brother. So we helped Colin along, and however, he was very brave, and he managed along with it too. And we came to Groom, and then we turned up leftwards up to Tiger Hill. It was now about 5 a.m. The sky had turned an orange color. And we looked around, and suddenly, like someone had struck a match on Kanchenjunga, 20 miles away. You could see that. And then one after the other, all of the mountain tips over there. It was amazing. Just something that you will not forget for the rest of your life. And thank you. Thank you very much.
What an image you've drawn up, Phil, and also with the teachers that you had during the time. It's that's another common bond we have, because Mr. Banerjee taught me at the same time, and I was like 20 years behind you, and so many of us who are younger than me also, and not only Mr. Banerjee, the Father Bouvet you mentioned was in school during our time. Father Stanford was the rector for several years when we were there in the 60s. So it's such a fascinating story that you are telling us, and I can sit here and listen to you for a long, long time, and that's for sure, because you've evoked memories in me that I thought I didn't have in me. So you've really spent a lot of good time being with us, Phil. I appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I am very happy to be talking to my fellow North Pointers now and in the future.
Thank you so much, and you be well with you and your family, and wish you always the best and healthy and long life.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. And likewise to you.